Northumbria, where I've been working for the last year or so. So first, a little bit about me. So I'm a zoology student at Newcastle University on a 3-year course with an optional placement year, which I eventually took up. From a very early age, I discovered I had a passion for the environmental sciences and anything nature-related, to be honest. So I knew that that was what I wanted to do going into my studies. And I was particularly drawn to Newcastle because of it being a vibrant city. I mean, the university's great, and the course was sort of right up my alley. My first year of university wasn't exactly the smoothest transition, to be completely honest. With COVID and industrial action, it made for quite a disjointed first year. And with that, I saw my own personal academic performances drop, as well as my motivation really kind of leave. Although I did have interesting modules, the majority of it was online, so it meant that it was kind of like harder to get involved with. And it turned out to be quite an antisocial environment, especially because you weren't allowed to interact with people outside your bubble. So on to second year, back to in-person lectures definitely sort of gave me that boost. And this is where I really identified a lack of experience for myself, both relevant to my my course and out of that. And that was a bit of a panic moment for me. So it's here where I really started looking at placements. But luckily, I saw a regaining confidence in my academic performances. So on to placement applications. This was quite challenging and stressful. In a very competitive market, you could see almost 500 applicants trying to apply for 1 or 2 positions, which were unpaid. So just to give you an idea of how tough it can be out there. But I made sure to focus my search on organizations that were relevant to me, so fit with my morals and also my career aspirations. And I wanted it to be here in the Northeast because that was quite convenient with me, with all my mates being here, and it was just like easier to not move than to move. But yeah, I really struggled on this aspect, to be completely honest, and it took me a long time of rejection after rejection till I realized that I needed to sort of take the initiative, and I sought out an organization in the Northeast that you might be aware of that wasn't offering placement opportunities, and I decided to email them, and well, yeah. Then I got here, the Natural History Society of Northumbria. Well, really aligned with my personal aspirations and morals in terms of the sense that the society is all about engaging the public in the importance of getting involved with nature and the importance of protecting it. So I knew that it was a great fit the second I found out about it, really. And my work was to be split between the Hancock Museum and the offices there and Gosford Nature Reserve, which I thought was a great split for me. So what was my role? Well, I was a student naturalist on a 9-month placement, part of a team of 2 with Amber, who you can see here, bottom right. And our job roles were relatively all-encompassing. Initially, we were told it was sort of nature communications, public engagement, as well as sort of practical work at Gosford Nature Reserve and wildlife and recording. But we soon found out that it was a lot more than that, and yeah, lots of experiences to be had. And our work was, like I mentioned before, split between the office and GNR. So what do we do day to day in the office? Well, I kind of came with preconceived notions of what an office was like to work in, that being boring, but I was actually really pleasantly surprised of how many different various jobs you could be doing on any given day, and this was actually turned out to be one of my favorite aspects of the job, from sort of editing videos for grant applications to getting involved with NHSN projects, being that sort of like front of house person who like talks to members, and it actually turned out to be a very sociable environment for me, which I started to sort of thrive in. When we weren't in the office, we were usually doing some sort of events and community work, either engaging the public or, for example, setting up natural history talks, which are up right now. I was really honoured to speak at the Society AGM, which is something that I was stepping out of my comfort zone to do. And it suddenly gave me that confidence boost that stuck with me for the rest of my placement. As well as getting involved with other organisations in the Northeast, such as the BSBI, really good for networking opportunities, just meeting like-minded people who worked within the sector, and it sort of broadens your horizons and what is possible and what you can go on to work to do. And then also we set up these stalls across the Northeast, encouraging people to get involved with the society, and our programs such as citizen science, programs like the Northeast Bee Hunt, and encouraging people about, to think about the importance of protecting pollinators. So, when I wasn't doing that, I was here, Gosford Nature Reserve. For those who don't know, although I'm sure a lot of you are very familiar about it, it's sort of like a safe haven for wildlife in the northeast, just in Gosford. With a wide range of habitats, whether it's woodland, wetland, meadow, and so on, with loads and loads of species that are, deserving of protection. And while I was there, a lot of it was conservation work. So that could be anything from, reed bed management, where you're sort of like restoring the reed beds so that they don't overgrow and cause the water to dry out. And that's really important because they have a sort of a responsibility in the reserve to clean the water that leads into the main lake. So very, very crucial to manage that, as well as tree and wildflower planting, which is just sort of fun work. But you could get up to all sorts of things on a day-to-day basis, whether it's carrying obscenely heavy logs of timber from one end of the reserve to the other, or sort of meadow management or things like that. Really exciting work. On top of that, Amber and I would travel around the northeast to different nature reserves where we could continue to make connections with people in the sector. And this was an opportunity for us to kind of gauge what other organisations were doing to manage their sites and reserves, and gave us that perspective of how maybe what we were doing really right and what we could do to improve. And just some nice pictures of us, seeing the seals in St. Mary's Island in RSPB Southam, and me staring out a window in WWT Washington. But one of the largest projects that I had on placement was the building of the boardwalk, where I was honoured to be part of a really passionate group of volunteers who knew a lot more than I did about construction, let's say that, trying to improve the accessibility of the reserve itself, creating a wheelchair-accessible boardwalk that led up to the Beckhide right at the far end of the reserve. Just to give you a bit of background on me, this is my last construction project. That's me looking very proud of it in Year 11 Design and Technology. It is still standing to this day, very surprisingly, but I'd sort of forgotten all of this, really. So it's just to give you an idea that I was quite passionate about something like this, but I never really picked it up after school. So I'm really honoured to be part of this project. Just an example of what you have to do to build a boardwalk. So we had to get these really massive metal screws and drill them into what was a muddy, wet marsh, which is easier said than done, especially when you have to keep it perfectly perpendicular to the ground. Although Chris Wren, who sort of was the lead on this project, devised this quite nifty rig where you got all these people around it and you span it in circles and eventually it would go into the ground. Fun, but a lot less fun when you've got a hole in your welly, which I did have. But eventually it started taking shape. And as the project went on, I started to gain confidence because I was very lucky to be on a team of people who were very fun to work with, but also very, very understanding that, your capabilities might not always meet theirs. But yeah, here's me attaching the wooden frame to the metal screws, and you can kind of see the progression of the boardwalk move over time, eventually till we get to this stage. I just remembered I'm supposed to use the mouse, where we were just finalising it and then putting down chicken wire on the top just to protect the wood, which led to quite a swanky looking boardwalk, if I do say so myself. So here's a good picture of the team. Unfortunately, Chris Wren is taking the photo, so he's not in it, but he was sort of the brain behind the operation. And then we've got John, Dave, who's right there, me, Aldo, Brian, and I've forgotten, I'm sorry. But yeah, so yeah, quite a magnificent thing. Anyway, the biggest part of my placement was probably the Birdhide project, which happened to be the last as well, where Amber and I were co-project managers to reinterpret some of the material on the inside of the bird hides at Gosford Nature Reserve, with a budget of £500, which, when you're doing up several buildings, can be quite tough. So just a quick view of the hides beforehand. Some of the pictures don't have the best lighting. They do tend to look better than this, but great hides just needed a bit of time, love and care, really. So we started on the planning, and that process is quite fun because you can be imaginative with your initial ideas. We also made sure to sort of gauge what the members and the volunteers thought about through a survey, the people that actually use these hides. And then we collated all of these ideas and put it in a project proposal which we prepared for James and Claire, where our ideas were accepted, and we were encouraged to apply for more funding to sort of to make our ideas come to fruition. So we applied for an extra £500 from the Dickinson's Memorial Fund, which was luckily very successful, and which doubled our budget. So suddenly we could do more than we initially hoped. And so we were responsible for sort of budgeting, as well as doing initial drafts and designs for a lot of the informative material, which is where we found out that we may not be very good designers. So that led us to sort of outsource our designing to John Buller, who was a very, very important factor in our project, designer and prints manufacturer. And yeah, so here are a few progress pictures of as we were going along. We knew we wanted to make big changes to improve the hides, and we thought a nice coat of paint and some really sort of standout boards and informative material would help. So yeah, just a few nice progress photos of us putting things up. And here are the results. So in the Lawrence, we designed these woodland bird identification guides to go on the windowsill, so that when you're looking out at the feeding station, you can sort of learn about the woodland birds while you're at it. We also had these species spotlight boards to encourage people to learn more about what highlight species you could see in any given habitat. For example, here it's woodland, so badgers, goldfinch, great spotted woodpecker. We did add a fourth one there. I forgot to put the photo. And then we also made these nature journaling boards that sort of highlighted some of the great nature journalism that goes on around the Northeast, specifically illustrations and extracts from some great nature journalists. For example, I'm blanking again, I'm very sorry. But yeah, some great illustrations there, and then also highlighting our Young Northeast Naturalist toolkit that had just come out recently. Then some more improvements in the Beck hide, more species spotlight boards, and also some wetland ID guides under perspex, which we thought added a bit of spice. And then in the Ridley hide, similar sort of themes, but this is probably one of our favourite touches, was the handmade silhouette of a grey heron, so that when educational groups came in, kids could sort of like see how tall they were in comparison to a grey heron, which I thought was quite nice, as well as some seasonal visitor boards, so people could understand which species of migratory birds you were likely to see at any given point in the year. And that, unfortunately, led me to the end of my placement, which was quite a sad moment, but quite fulfilling to be able to look back and sort of see all the work I'd done, which you don't tend to acknowledge when you'd gone through it. And I say work I'd done, I mean this was like hugely mine and Amber's placement. And at this point I was honoured to be nominated for Newcastle University Placement Student of the Year Award for small and medium-sized business, which I was very, very grateful to win. This was very, very surreal for me, to be completely honest, but a very nice full circle moment where I got to reflect back on how hard it was for me to get any work experience to begin with, that sort of paradox of needing experience to get experience. And I was sort of very set on giving up on a placement altogether, but that perseverance kept with me, and I'm very glad I did it, because it's opened up so many opportunities for me, and I'm incredibly grateful to the people that actually gave me that opportunity in the beginning, specifically I think Claire Freeman and James Common, who, despite my severe lack of experience overall, were willing to give me a shot. So that winning that sort of put me up for another award, which was Outstanding Contribution to the Workplace, which I also won. And at this point, it was getting a bit too surreal. I don't think I knew what to do with myself, because as someone who'd actually never won anything before in my life, it was a bit overwhelming, but great nonetheless, and something I'll never ever forget, really. So yeah, and I took a lot away from the placement, but most of all, I think, was the importance of adaptability, and how you may not be very good at something, but that shouldn't stop you from doing it, and you sort of widen your perspective and always try and challenge yourself. And I think it was a perfect environment to do that in for me, which saw like my self-confidence increase exponentially, and my academic performances as well. And it's also weirdly increased things outside of my work life, like my sociability. I feel like I've generally become a more open person because of it, because of how many people you interact with on a day-to-day basis. And this all led me to be offered a new role at the NHSN as student ambassador, which would sort of supplement my studies at university. And I would be mainly responsible for sort of representing the NHSN at public events, as well as getting involved with citizen science projects and all sorts. So I'm just at the beginning of this. But now it's back to university, and I've got a whole new set of challenges ahead of me, one being my dissertation, which I'm doing on the factors that affect the first molt in seal pups on the Farne Islands, so that should be fun, if I can get out there, because the weather is awful. And in terms of looking to the future, I'm trying to keep my options open. I feel like it's unnecessary to plan my life years in advance, and it's quite nice to sort of see opportunities as they arise. So, yeah, thank you for listening.